Many people equate the amount of government spending with how oppressive that government is. This is not necessarily the case, however. Consider two hypothetical governments. Government A spends 1% of the gross domestic product, or GDP, on equipping terror squads that go around randomly brutalizing innocent civilians among the government's own subjects. Government B spends 50% of the GDP on buying giant purple lollipops for children. Taxpayers do pay more to sustain Government B than Government A, but can any sensible person say that Government B is more oppressive? Would any sensible taxpayer prefer the high likelihood of being killed and brutalized to the payment of 50% of his income to the government? Neither is desirable, of course, but which is worse? Clearly, what matters with regard to government oppressiveness is not just how much money the government spends, but also what the government spends the money on. The issue of measuring how oppressive a given government is can be complicated even further. Not only is the amount of government spending not a direct indication of oppressiveness, but two otherwise identical governments can differ dramatically in how oppressive they are based on the technological environment in which they operate. Consider two governments, C and D. Each government has the same tax rate and tax code. However, computers have not yet been invented in the country of government C, and each taxpayer must spend many hours, and perhaps days, filling and filling paper forms which he often does not understand, simply in order to pay the government. Most taxpayers have to spend additional amounts of money paying tax preparation services in order to even have a chance of filing their tax returns correctly. Under Government D, however, there is a thriving high-technology market, and numerous online tax filing services have emerged, many of which will fill out tax forms quickly and for free, based on inputs of rudimentary income data. The taxpayers of Government D are much less affected in their lives by the government than the taxpayers of Government C, even though both governments have identical tax and regulatory structures. I propose two fairly simple criteria to determine how oppressive any government is vis-à-vis its subjects. I will phrase these criteria in the form of questions. The first criterion I call the Time Criterion. How much time does the government require of its subjects? The second criterion is the Pain Criterion. How much pain do the government subjects have to endure on account of the government? Time spent on account of the government includes any of the following. Time spent on regulatory compliance, including filling out forms, meeting with government officials, and fulfilling government regulatory mandates. Time spent on work, the income for which goes to pay taxes to the government. Time spent in so-called service projects required by the government, including but not limited to military conscription, mandatory community service, and jury duty. Note that any work for or under the direction of a government that a private individual entered into by choice, such as voluntary military or community service, does not count here. Time spent waiting in line, or queue, or experiencing any kinds of procedural delays on account of government policies and regulations. We have elaborated somewhat on the Time Criterion. Now we will delve more deeply into the Pain Criterion. Pain experienced on account of government includes any of the following: death, physical injuries, permanent or temporary, physical pain that does not lead to physical injury, physical or emotional discomfort of any kind, invasion of one's privacy, and restriction of one's movements. Moreover, this pain also encompasses the foregone opportunities to preserve or improve one's health, which are foregone as a consequence of government regulations and prohibitions. While it is hypothetically possible to reduce all factors constituting the Time Criterion to a common unit of measurement, this is not the case with the Pain Criterion. Not all kinds of pain are commensurate with other kinds. For instance, I would prefer any amount of physical discomfort to death, and I would prefer any amount of emotional discomfort to physical injury. Moreover, pain is not commensurate with time. in the sense that I would rather spend my entire life filling senseless bureaucratic forms rather than die or be seriously injured. So, how might it be possible to resolve these complications and get a clear view of government oppression? While it is impossible to express multiple kinds of pain, including death, with a common unit of measurement, and likewise impossible to express certain kinds of pain in terms of money or time, it is possible to ordinally rank different kinds of pain as always better or worse than other kinds. For instance, death is always worse than any other kind of pain. Moreover, irreparable physical injuries are always worse than reparable ones. Likewise, physical pain is always worse than emotional pain, provided that the emotional pain does not bring about physically self-destructive behaviors in the person experiencing it. So, with this kind of consideration in mind, our next step is going to be to actually rank these pains, which is what I will do in the next video of this series.